This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
It is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles. Greg, let's take a look at this offense. Minicamp is over. Camp doesn't start until late July. This is really the perfect time to try to set our 53 and stack up where the offense and defense is. Today we start with the offense, and we'll start with the quarterback position. I look at your depth chart. Cam, number 1. Mac, number 2. Stidham, 3. Brian Hoyer, he's out ski. Just your thoughts overall. We haven't talked since Cam Newton apparently wowed the universe in his final minicamp practice. Just your thoughts about that position after witnessing all the open practices that you did.
So going back to Cam and the end of minicamp, the final day, because we talked after the first 2 days of minicamp, and we talked a lot about Mac Jones. And then the next day, as is normal for Belichick, he decided to change things up a little bit. Cam got most of the snaps, had one of his best days at practice, no question. I didn't think it was overly competitive, the practice. I wouldn't say Mac Jones was bad in the practice or anything like that. I thought, Cam Newton was good. I left that practice field with the feeling that basically the first 2 days, and especially the second day, as we talked about, I thought Belichick and Josh McDaniels were testing Mac Jones before the summer break, before they set the course for training camp and what they're going to do and how the snaps are going to be divided. They really pushed him and wanted to see what he could do. And he performed great. I think he exceeded their expectations. He was really the star those couple days. And I think I left the practice field with the distinct feeling after the third day that was sort of a parting gift for Cam. That not that he's being released or anything like that or traded, but just look, Mac had his couple days. Here's your day. We'll set everything up that's really in your wheelhouse so you feel good coming in the next day. And I'll also point this out, Nick, that Cam, we talked about his body language on that Tuesday, after the second day, and how noticeable it was. Mr. Energy was Mr. Low Energy that day and was not happy and off by himself and stuff like that. He came out the next day and was completely opposite. I mean, I think that either he knew it, he heard the media reports and decided to do something about it, or someone spoke to him. Or maybe he talked to Belichick and Belichick was like, look, Cam, you're still our guy. Like, just, we got to see what the kid can do. So we're going to test him and stuff like that. So Cam took the practice field in a good mood, played really well. And now everybody leaves for the summer break in a good mood, which I think was the point. So I'm not ready to go one way or the other. I do think that the mini camp in the offseason is mostly for teaching and learning. It's not about competition, even though they are sort of testing people here and there to see where they might be come the start of training camp. But the competition, any competition, does not start until training camp, probably not till about the second week of training camp. So in my opinion, absolutely nothing has changed. I think there is going to be a very real quarterback competition in training camp this summer, and it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. And it's funny that you mentioned that with Cam. That's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe Belichick said, all right, let's send Cam off after this minicamp feeling good about himself, and Mac feels good about himself. We feel good about Mac. Let's give Cam a little bit of a carrot here. Let's give him most of the reps. Let's not allow it to be as competitive so Cam can feel really good going into the next few weeks before camp starts. And I would agree with the idea of the quarterback position now being a legit competition in late July, early August. Let's jump to running back. I think everybody looks at this position. They say Damian Harris, rightfully so.
Hang on one sec, Nick. I just wanted to continue sort of the discussion on the actual 53 once we got done with our mini camp thoughts. But a couple of things I wanted to tell people. Number one, I went back and I looked at, for a long time when I've done this, I've had 53-man roster average, which is basically like an average at some point in time. I don't remember, to be honest. I don't even remember the last time I did it. So I was like, all right, it's time for a reset. So I went back and I looked at the week 2 rosters for the Patriots. I don't really care about opening day or initial roster because so many things are going on with injuries and things like that. Or, they don't want to sign a veteran for week 1 when he could get cut and his salary is not guaranteed, that sort of thing. So I went to week 2 and I went through all the averages. People can see the offense. Tomorrow we'll publish the defense, not only the averages, but also my cuts and trades, which is going to be very interesting. But it's sort of a couple of overall points going into this 53-man. First of all, look, there's a lot of guessing going on here because we haven't seen these guys in pads, and I'm not making any judgments on them. As always, their performance on the practice field and training camp will determine what goes on. And I just think that, and I know, Nick, we probably say this every year, and some years where it's dumb, and I'm probably more guilty of it than other people. But I will say, doing this 53-man roster was by far the hardest I've ever done on the Patriots. And I'll tell you why I think that is. It's because the Patriots brought in so much free agent talent this year, and also the need to develop a younger talent class on this team. Like, you can't just say, all right, well, let's just use an example because we'll roll into this in a second, but let's use James White and JJ Taylor as an example. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, James White's the guy, he's going to be here. Like, not necessarily anymore, I don't think. I mean, you got to fit a lot of free agents that they sign onto the roster. You have to keep a lot of the draft picks, provided they're healthy. And that means a lot of people are going to be on the outside looking in. And I had a really tough time with this. As far as the quarterbacks, and then we'll move on here. I look at this point in time, and this is just a snapshot at this point in time. It's not necessarily a projection. It's just where I see things right now. I don't think there's any way that Cam's not here. Now, could that change in camp? Could he stink? Yeah. But as of right now, I think Cam and Mack are the two definites, and then it's between Stidham and Hoyer. And to me, not that I'm crazy about either of those guys, and I do think that Brian Hoyer brings a lot in terms of knowledge and experience and things like that, and he'd be great to have around. But you can't ignore what happened last year, which was basically, and we talked about it at the time, that Kansas City Chiefs game. Belichick was freaking furious after that game. I mean, the whole reason that Brian Hoyer was on the roster was in a pinch, he could manage you and get you to a victory, and he just completely failed there. And then he was buried for the rest of the season. And so I just don't know how you can keep a guy on the roster with that background. And also, I think Stidham's shown enough that I want to see a little bit more. So I'm willing to keep him, but there's no question with the roster crunch, keeping two quarterbacks is on the table. I just don't know how you feel any confidence with Cam Newton and Mac Jones that I wasn't comfortable keeping two. So that's why I kept Stidham.
All right, so that's the big picture. Let's get back to the detail. Let's get back to the running backs. As Greg said, he went back to week 2 and looked at all the averages, figured it out. And at running back, 53-man average is about, 4.4 guys on the roster. So between 4 and 5 running backs, they usually go into the season with. As I was mentioning, Damian Harris, Sony Michel, I think all of us feel like that's the 1 and the 2. But now you have Stevenson, Bolden, Taylor, James White, Tyler Gaffney. Tell people how those guys kind of fell into their slots and why they did.
Well, unless there's an injury, I think Stevenson is here. I mean, we've seen it time and time again with running backs. Now, look, could Stevenson, in theory, displace Sony Michel? And I'm sure a lot of people will do that on their 53-mans. Yes. But naming the last Patriots rookie running back that's done anything here. You're just going against history. And it's not reality. The reality is that the odds are far greater that Stevenson has a redshirt year where he's on the roster and he's not doing anything. And so I think that with Sony Michel going into his contract year, you also have the added bonus that when he becomes a free agent, if he signs with another team, you can get a comp pick. And I don't think the Patriots are going to be big players in free agency next year. So it's a big comp pick year, in my opinion. So I think Harris, Michelle, and Stevenson are here. I think Brandon Bolden, when he left and went to Miami for that year, I think even the Patriots realized they lost something without Brandon Bolden around, not only at running back, but on special teams. And I did not, when I went through my roster, I did separate the special teams only guy, and I do not consider Bolden a special teams only guy because I do think he's a decent running back. And he's certainly a good third if you have the rookie inactive every week. And then it comes down to James White and J.J. Taylor. I don't think that you can keep both. Maybe if you find another roster spot, like say Stevenson does overtake Michelle, then yes, you can keep both. And that's the ideal, that you have the veteran James White, you have J.J. Taylor getting a few chances, but also, I'm hoping he returns kicks this year. And when it came to, I decided to trade James White, and I love James White. He's been a great player here. But a couple of things. Last year was not good for him on or off the field. I don't think his training camp's been a lot better. He had a lot of drops in training camp. He was out there as a street free agent, or a free agent in general. Outside of Tampa, didn't really get a whole lot of sniffs. Came back on the Patriots on a fully guaranteed $2.4 million deal. I'm not sure if all of that moves, if they trade him or what. But I just think that J.J. Taylor has improved too much. I think he's too talented. The Patriots kept him on their roster last year. I think if they release him and think he's coming back to the 53, I think that it's fool's gold. I don't think that's happening. So what are you going to do? I mean, how many running backs do you need? And I think I'm keeping J.J. Taylor, and I'm doing something for James White. And there's got to be some team out there that's interested in a good veteran pass back.
Any concern about how the team would react if they traded James White, or hey, it's just business and move forward?
Yeah, it's just business, and people know he was a free agent. He could have gone anywhere, and
Right.
he had to come. He came back for a $2.4 million deal, which is, basically a little bit more over the veteran minimum. So, yeah, I don't have any concerns over that.
All right, let's jump to the receiver spot. The 53-man average, again, right around 4.5. I think nobody would be surprised with the top here with Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers. I think everybody agrees those are the top three guys. The rest is pretty interesting. So you have Gunnar Olszewski as the fourth guy at the wide receiver spot. And then you have N'Keal Harry getting traded. First, let's start with Harry. What have you seen from him, Greg, during camp? Do you feel better about him in any kind of way? I know that he's reportedly lost some weight. He might look a little bit quicker. That depends on who you read on Twitter and how that guy feels about Harry.
Mm-hmm.
But your general thoughts on Harry and why you have him on the trading block.
My general thoughts on Harry is that I think he's improved a little bit. I have liked what I've seen out of him with the ball in his hand after the catch. The problem with him is getting to the catch.
Yeah.
Do I necessarily think that this offense and what they've asked of him have been the ideal for N'Keal Harry to maximize his skill set? I don't think so. I think that, and really, Nick, I wanted to see more of N'Keal Harry. So on my initial 53 man, where I think I ended up with like 58 guys on the roster, I had N'Keal Harry on the roster. I wanted to see more, and I was hoping that he would sort of be I think they need to, and I'm sort of over the tight end thing. I know you and I have talked about that last year. But I think he's a big slot. I mean, there's no reason why N'Keal Harry, with his physical tools, can't be a poor man's, Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, at the end of their careers, when they slow down a little bit. There's no reason why N'Keal Harry can't do that. And so I would like to see them do that with him more. And that would be my ticket to him making the 53 man. But as of right now, and the tight ends and the fullback are a big mess, and I think we're going to get into that in a second. I think that's one of the positions that's putting a stranglehold over this roster in terms of flexibility. And I was surprised when I went back and I looked at the rosters that tight ends out of the past 5 years. So you said the 5-year average was 4.6, but in 3 of the 5 years they've kept only 4 wide receivers, and that's not even when they were all that great at tight end outside of Rob Gronkowski. And so I was surprised by that. And you combine those two things. So I only kept 4 receivers. And do I feel good about it, Nick? No. I mean, and this is in general. I mean, with these new free agents, this is what we talked about inviting the unknown onto your roster. Like, you don't know anything about Aguilar and Bourne and Smith and Henry and these other guys. You know, you don't know, are they reliable? Are they mentally tough? How are they physically? You know, Aguilar, I think, stays healthy. Bourne gets a lot of like little injuries. We know Smith has barely been on the practice field. Hunter Henry gets hurt all the time. So, you know, how is that going to factor in? But for me, I went Aguilar, I went Bourne, I went Jacoby Myers as a number 3, Gunnar Olszewski as a punt returner, sort of early Julian Edelman punt returner, give you a little bit on at wide receiver. But people also have to remember that this is going to be a run-based, tight end-based offense. How many wide receivers do you need on the field? I know our fantasy football loving listeners out there will be like, what? 4 wide receivers? What are you talking about? But that's just the way the Patriots do things. Like, the wide receiver is not that big a position for them. They are about the whole. And I think the whole runs through the running back, the offensive line, and the tight ends. And so that's why I stole a roster spot at wide receiver. I will say that N'Keal Harry would be my 5th guy if I was keeping a 5th guy.
Yeah, and let's remind everybody, you know, Greg is doing this exercise looking at it through the lens of the Patriots and looking at their average numbers, how they keep the roster together. You know, for me personally, see you later, Brandon Bolden. I would keep Harry. I would swap those 2 guys. I don't know if you need Bolden when you have Harris, Michelle, Stevenson, and J.J. Taylor. I don't think you need another back. I'd move on to Bolden personally, and I would keep Harry as that 5th wide receiver. But again, that's just me. Tight end. Oh, and by the way, wide receiver, the guys cut. Just say the names. Isaiah Zuber, gone. Devin Smith, gone. Trey Nixon, Marvin Hall, Devin Ross, and Christian Wilkerson, other guys that Greg has cut. Again, Harry gets dealt. Now let's get to tight end / fullback. This is, to some people, boring. I think because of how the Patriots went out in free agency and added 2 big names, it's anything less but, you know, boring, anything but boring. And when you look at how the position fits, it's interesting. Tight end, fullback, the 53-man average, again, due to your numbers, is 4. And right now you have 5 guys in those 2 position groups. So you're giving them an extra fullback / tight end. And this is how it breaks down. You've got Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. No shocker. Breaking news. Devin Asiasi as your 3rd tight end. And then you have Jakob Johnson, at fullback. And then going back to you and I's, you know, our conversations when Smith and Henry signed, going back to March, Greg, we talked about the idea of, well, you know, everybody's going to get wrapped up with this whole, they just signed 2 big tight ends. They drafted 2 tight ends last year. Dalton Keene, to me, and I know you feel the same way, he's not really a prototypical tight end. We've talked about kind of being an H-back and being in the backfield more than you would see a traditional tight end. So you do have Dalton Keene as that kind of second fullback, I'm guessing, because he's going to be that H-back role. Cut is Troy Fumagalli and Matt Lacoste. That might surprise some people that Lacoste is gone. But your thoughts on this depth chart and, you know, again, keeping both Johnson and Keene?
Yeah, so the 53-man average is 4, and that's tight ends and fullbacks, and I'm already at 5. I mean, I think ideally this is a position that scares me, Nick, in terms of Jonnu Smith has been on the field for like a cup of coffee. This is not unusual for him. Hunter Henry always has something, an ankle, something, lower body injury. He's always in fantasy. I remember I've had him in fantasy football. It's like every week because he's questionable for every game. And he wasn't playing for the Patriots where everyone's questionable for every game. And then you look at, you know, the backup options. Devin Asiasi, I think he's done better this year. I'm certainly encouraged by what I saw in the minicamp. Dalton Keene a little bit better. I still think he's a bit like a big puppy out there, where he's not sure what direction he's going in, but he's going to go in at full bore. Ideally, Nick, in a perfect world, you would say, all right, we have Smith and Henry. We're building this offense around the tight end, so we feel better about having Ossie and Matt Lacoste on the roster to give us two deep at both tight end spots. But now, and I do think that could be part of the conversation at the end of the day, Nick. I think they could, even though Josh McDaniels loves the fullback, Bill could say, look, you got one way or the other. Like, we're only keeping this many at tight end and fullback. Like, what do you want to do? We can't keep 6. Like, It's not going to happen. Do you want to just go tight end heavy and, keep Dalton Keene maybe? And I love Jakob Johnson and I want him here. And he gives you the sledgehammer fullback as opposed to the athletic fullback. And I'm sure McDaniels wants that. But are you better off going with 4 tight ends and 1 fullback, and that 1 fullback being Dalton Keene because he gives you a swing? Are you gonna cut or move Dalton Keene a year after trading up to get him in the draft and actually giving up a ransom for that pick to get him? I think if you put Josh McDaniels on truth serum, I think that Smith, Henry, Lacoste, Ossie, and Jakob Johnson would be his 5 on this team. But man, it's a real wild card, this position, and I don't know how it's going to work out, but it holds a lot of the keys in terms of how many extra roster spots are you going to have to keep people.
Yeah, I mean, that's just insane. And it's not that I disagree with you, but it's insane to think that tight end is a quote-unquote wild card.
After how much money they spent?
Yeah, with all the money they spent, with the 2 draft picks in last year's draft, you should be settled. Like, with that money and that draft capital that you invested into that position, you should be set for the next 5-6 years. And with Jonnu Smith coming up lame and not doing much during minicamp, as you said, Henry's history, Keene could not stay healthy last year. Ossie, I have read, like you just said, he looks better, which is good to read. Again, I think last year, COVID, how the offseason and preseason went, rookies from last year deserve the benefit of the doubt. So maybe Ossie's figuring some things out and he'll be better this year. But the idea that it is a wild card, and then the idea that this wild card is inevitably also affecting wide receiver, because I don't think any of us see these wide receivers on the roster as a true number 1. Aguilar's nice. He's more of a 2. Bourne's a 3. Jacoby's a 3/4. Gunners are 4/5. So in a perfect world, you would be able to look at this and say, okay, tight end is set. It is really solid, if not spectacular. They spent the money. They spent the picks. They're awesome there. And then, maybe you slide in a number 1 receiver, but now it's all kind of, fluid as we get ready for training camp, which is very interesting to me, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be an ongoing discussion. And it's going to be a tough call. They're at a, we got all excited about their free agency splurge, and it's great, but it does cause other issues, and there's going to be a lot for them to sort through, especially on offense. Defense was a little bit easier, other than like edge and things like that. But but on defense, you also have to remember that you just beefed up the defensive line, which changes the math all over the place. So tight end changes the math on offense. Defensive line changes the math on defense.
All right, so let's jump to the offensive line, quickly go through this. Tackle, Isaiah Wynn, Trent Brown, Justin Herron, and William Sherman. Corey Cunningham cut. Your guy, your boy, Yadni Kajust.
Moonlight Graham Kajust.
Moonlight Graham is cut. Your thoughts overall? I know we've talked about Trent Brown. One thing that jumped out to me, Greg, reading some of the stuff over the past few days, is that Brown has elected to stay at Foxborough the next 6 weeks. Yep. And he commented saying, hey, listen, I'm just following my 2018 plan. Like whatever I did that year, I'm doing this year. That's to me at least a pretty good sign, not a guarantee, but it is good to hear him say, "Oh, I'm not going on a vacation. I am going to hang around the facility for the next 6 weeks and at least put some work in."
Oh yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a huge indicator that he's going to have another good year. I mean, he went back to the straight cash homie plan from his last time here, where he's like, I'm getting that bag, and so I'm actually going to work. So that's good. I mean, that shows that his attitude's in the right place, and hopefully that continues, and hopefully he doesn't encounter any adversity and sort of packs it in and says, I have a fat bank account, so I don't have to deal with Belichick or Brick, the offensive line coach, yelling at him. But that's a good sign. I thought offensive line was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Outside of, I don't know what to do with William Sherman. I mean, I don't know whether he's a guard or a tackle, and that's because they haven't been in pads yet, and we haven't seen them one-on-one pass block or drive block or anything like that. And so, I projected him as a tackle. If Cajuste or, I mean, I doubt Corey Cunningham pops at this point in time, but if Cajuste all of a sudden pops and is a player, then I think, you slide Sherman over to the interior, and then you got to find yourself another roster spot if you want, because normally the Patriots keep 4 at tackle, 5 at interior, and I kept 4 and 4. I bought a roster spot on the interior with Ted Karras here, and plus I think guys like Haran, and also push comes to shove, Isaiah Wynn, I think, gives you flexibility on the interior, that they can go to the interior, like say Shaq Mason goes down or something like that. I think one of the options is Wynn goes to guard, Brown goes to left tackle, and then Haran plays right tackle. Yeah. That's one of the options. So I look at the flexibility that they have on the offensive line, and I felt comfortable that we could buy another interior roster spot from the interior offensive line, and I think it'll work out that way.
Yeah, the interior O-line, people know the names: Mason, Andrews, Owenu, and Karras. And really, I mean, this is a top 3 offensive line in football if they stay healthy. Yep. And the only thing I would say is if Sherman doesn't work out, I would love to see another tackle, another kind of swing guy there. I think that's the one spot where they could afford some more depth if Sherman is a guard and not a tackle, or he just is a stink bomb at camp. I would like to see another tackle in the mix. Hopefully, maybe like you said, Cunningham pops, maybe Moonlight Graham does something. But, overall, the offensive line is a top 3 unit. If they're healthy, they're studs, and they should help this football team. All right, so there's your first shot at the offense, looking at the 53. Another story that popped up this week, and a lot of people have been tweeting about it. A lot of people have been trying to figure out who he was talking about. Tom Brady is going to be on an episode of The Shop Uninterrupted this Friday, and he decided to call a fellow quarterback a mother bleeper. So we're all trying to figure out, he's talking about his free agency and the fact that this team in question was not going to hang in until the end. And he was saying, hey, you're going to stick with that mother bleeper. And everybody's trying to figure out who the MFer is. Greg, who do you think the MFer is?
I think it's Mitch Trubisky. My runner-up would be Jared Goff and the Rams. I just took that. I know I saw the comment. Everybody was like, I saw the comment because on Twitter, little Twitter on the side, it said like, what's trending, and it was Garoppolo, and I clicked on it. It was this Brady thing, and everybody's like, oh, he's doing Jimmy dirty and blah blah blah. And like, what people have to understand is you have to go back. Well, if assuming Brady is being honest about his feelings at the time, you have to go back to that offseason. The San Francisco 49ers were just coming off a great, I think they were 13-3 or 14-2, had gone to the Super Bowl. Yep. Were 10 minutes away from the Super Bowl title with Jimmy Garoppolo, a quarterback. Like, I don't really think Tom Brady's reaction to his former teammate, who he also shares an agent with, would basically be the equivalent of, the equivalent of, and I just lost my train of thought. That he's a bum. Like, you're going to stick with that bum. That's the way I read that reaction, which is you're going to stick with that bum. Jimmy was not a bum at the time. I don't think it's Drew Brees either. Drew Brees was not a bum. They were, good every year and contenders. To me, you got to go with somebody who the rest of the league thinks stinks. And to me, I think that the Bears came in late on Brady. I think they had a chance to go to the wall on Brady. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the coach, the GM, the ownership, whatever, and they just said no at the last second. And to me, that's the Jared Goff getting out from the Jared Goff contract. I don't think was really all that much of a possibility for them. I mean, could it be the Dolphins and Fitzpatrick? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But to me, it screamed Trubisky that the Bears were bringing that bum back for another year, and wouldn't you know, a year later he's a backup quarterback.
Ryan Tannehill. That's who I think the MFer is. Number one, Tennessee was mentioned a lot. As soon as Brady, we found out he was not going to stick with New England, Tennessee was mentioned a hell of a lot. And the way I look at this is Tannehill was a free agent at that moment. He ended up signing an extension. They got the extension done. But Tennessee could have easily just walked away from Tannehill, put Brady in that spot, bing, bang, boom, you're all set, right? You had a team that just beat the Patriots in Foxborough in the playoffs, and Brady was obviously watching the game. We all remember how terrible Tannehill was in that that's one of the worst playoff games a quarterback has ever had. He threw, I think, less than 100 yards. He was brutal. And I think I could just kind of envision this, that Tannehill's contract is up. You don't have to get rid of him or trade him or find a way to lose him. You just let him walk. You bring Brady in. It's an easy peasy 1-2-3 kind of scenario. And so Brady's saying, all right, it's either me in free agency or they bring back Tannehill on a big fat contract extension. On top of that, he has a relationship with Mike Vrabel. I could totally see him saying exactly what he said on the Shop Uninterrupted to Mike Vrabel. I could easily see him on the phone with Vrabel say, you're going to bring back that MFer? And Vrabel's like, look, Tom, blah, blah, blah. And Brady's like, whatever. Brady had experience watching Tannehill when he played for Miami. They played him twice a year. I mean, he's seen him play more than anybody up close. And again, I just keep going back to that playoff game. Like you mentioned, Greg, the Jimmy Garoppolo stuff doesn't make sense because San Fran was just in the Super Bowl. I don't think Brady would throw a former teammate under the bus that badly. You mentioned the agent, which is also a great point. I think it's Ryan Tannehill. I think he thought he was going to Tennessee to play for Mike Vrabel. It was a playoff team with all the elements, could easily make a run to the Super Bowl, and they decided to sign Tannehill to an extension that now, if you look at it, because of what they had to do with Julio Jones, they are now going to pay. I mean, the cap number for Tannehill, not this year, but the 2 years after, is near $40 million a year. They married themselves to Tannehill. And I could see Brady saying, you just married yourself to Ryan bleeping Tannehill when you could have had me on a short-term deal and paid me less money. I think it's Ryan Tannehill. All right, let's.
By the way, can we do one more real quick blind item? Because I saw this today. I like these blind items. Yeah. So Caitlin Kaler from The Defector, she used to be my teammate at the MMQB, talked to 6 anonymous NFL players in order to get their wide-ranging, unfiltered thoughts on the vaccine. This is player number 4, and your job is to guess which quarterback it is.
Okay.
Player 4. Oh, yeah. My quarterback, he is not getting vaccinated. He was like, basically, you could still get COVID, and he said his theory is 5 years from now, guys might turn into aliens or something like that. Laughs. It's a joke, but I feel like, come on, dude. He said he didn't want to lose his abilities, and he felt like it would slow him down. The vaccine.
My
guess. Who? Go ahead.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's my guess too. It's totally Josh. It's totally Josh Allen. He's such a meathead. You can totally see him being like something. Yeah, man, it was the aliens, man. It was the aliens. Like, but the big thing is like, Josh Allen is a moron. The guy can throw the ball, and he played a good quarterback last year, but he is a moron. So okay, so we can.
All right, let's get to the member question of the day. You said you would find one, so hopefully you found a great one.
I did, and this is this isn't really a question, but so Monty 213 says, because I did my Sunday notebook was taking stock where the Patriots rookies are after off-season practices. And I think one of my nickel packages was about N'Keal Harry. And I said, I don't know why people love to dump on N'Keal Harry. The dude is always trying, and it's not his fault the Patriots drafted him in the first round. But I thought he had a solid camp. I don't think he needs to move to tight end quite yet. Former Patriot, brief Patriot, former Patriot, Jordan Matthews is attempting to do just that. But I would really like to see the Patriots invest some real time in camp trying to make Harry a big slot. This is like we talked about. He has a chance to do that. I could see him being a latter Anquan Bolden or Larry Fitzgerald. So Monty 2021-3 says, he gives me my quote, I don't know why people love to dump on N'Keal Harry, says one of the guys who has done more dumping on N'Keal Harry than almost anyone. I love you, Greg, but this comment made me laugh a bit. How many reporters have the balls to ask a player why they aren't as good as other players taken at their position in the draft? He gives a YouTube clip. He says he gives another clip where you actually say that they should bulk him up and move him to tight end. And then there's another clip that I haven't watched. So I wanted to give my response to that. So my response is there's a difference between being a fair and objective journalist where I'm covering a team and asking questions than dumping on a guy. When I say dumping, I'm more talking about the sports talk show radio hosts, people who, like my buddies with Felger and Mass, who have been all over N'Keal Harry and basically call him a bum and he's terrible and he's this and that. Like there's a difference. Me asking N'Keal Harry, it's a legitimate question that I asked him, which is, why do you think you haven't been as successful as some of the other receivers in his draft class, including guys who were taken a lot later than him? That's a legitimate question. That's not a criticism. I'm not dumping on him. That's a fact. And I'm trying to get his response. I'm trying to get him to say, like, give us a reason. I had trouble with the playbook as a rookie. Tom wasn't welcoming to me as a rookie. And then where you actually say that they should bulk him up and move him to tight end. How is that dumping on N'Keal Harry? I'm trying to I think he's a good football player. I think there's a good football player in there, and I'm trying to find a place where he can be a good football player. It's obviously not an X or Z receiver in the Patriots offense. That's not working for him. So I think I am totally entitled to say that I was not one of the guys dumping on N'Keal Harry. I'll leave it up to you, Nick, as the unbiased observer, sort of third party. If you think I was dumping on N'Keal Harry with any of those comments, but I think I was just being fair, objective, and critical, but not dumping on him.
I think it's a fine line, and people, what happens is now, and I'm not going to go too long on this because it's a whole philosophical thing. And if I had 6 beers in me, I'd tell you for 2 hours how I feel about that. But it's the idea of like media, and everybody kind of just throws the media into one bucket, and it keeps getting done. And ESPN having, people that are personalities / news people. You've got Adam Schefter, who's one of the best NFL insiders. I think the best NFL insider, but he's also being thrown out there to do opinion now. And so what happens is it all kind of just gets jumbled up. It's one big bowl of jambalaya. So people have a tough time. And I don't blame the people because, they're not taught journalism classes, and they don't get the minutia in what's different from being a journalist and writing versus being a talk show host, because now those worlds are blended. I mean, you're even on Felger and Maz, and at times you have to give your opinion.
Yep.
So I think it's tough for people to differentiate when Greg Bedard has the journalist hat on and the Felger and Maz hat on, and he's asked by Felger, hey, give me your opinion on this. And we know Felger's just going to keep grilling you until you have an opinion, damn it. So I think that's the issue. I think when people write and they have the journalist hat on like you do, yes, you're giving your thoughts objectively about the player in this system. You're not talking about him big picture, who he is, does he suck, does he not suck? You're talking about the team that you are covering. That is your job. I agree with you about N'Keal Harry. I think Harry's a good football player. I think he is not on the right team. I think the team has not deployed him in the right way. I think the quarterback play, even going back to Brady when Brady did not trust him after he got hurt his rookie season, I think the quarterback play has also castrated Harry's ability to make some plays. And I think if you put him on another team and they use him correctly, he's going to be a good football player. The other thing is he will never, justify the first round pick. So you put all of that together. He was picked in the first round. He doesn't produce like a first rounder. He was probably picked by the wrong team. He's been utilized in the wrong way, and he has not had great quarterback play. You put all of that together, and I'm not excusing some of the stuff that we've seen from him, but when you think about it big picture and you try not to be emotionally invested, which is very difficult for people to do, but when you're not emotionally invested in the player and you look at what he's had to deal with and the circumstances surrounding him, I think you can say this dude still has a chance to make some plays. Probably in a different system on a different team. Unless the Patriots say, we're going to change the plan. And like you said, we're going to put him in as a big slot, which is kind of funky because you got Jacoby Myers in the slot now. So, it gets a little funky there. But that's how I feel about the journalistic side of it, the talk show side of it, and Harry himself as a football player. The Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, wrapping it up. We gave you the offense, the 53. We gave you who the MFer was, and we also talked a lot about N'Keal Harry. Everybody, enjoy yourself. Have a good weekend. We'll be back next week.